I started out as a writer or as a playwright when I was in my 20s. I started painting because I went to Provincetown to a school for the winter in the early 80s. And it was a school called Freehand, and it was a writing school. They had 8 people, and we had, it was women writers, fiction and nonfiction and poetry, and then there was a day of theater and a day of photography. And that was from September to May. And they were like, yeah, you're a good writer, you know, but we're listening to your writing and like, we think you're a painter. And I was like, no, I'm not a painter. I don't know anything about painting. I haven't took an art class, I don't know anything about painting. And they were like, no, we think you're a painter. At Thanksgiving, they said they got somebody's studio and they filled it full of paints and covered the walls with canvases. And they said, you have a week. I want you to lock yourself in here and I want you to paint every day, all day. I said, I don't know anything about these paints. And they said, well, you just mix this in here, and here's some brushes and clean it. And here's some rags. And I was like, well, there's nothing to do in Provincetown, especially when nobody's there in the middle of the winter. So I just like went into there and locked myself in there and started painting. And by the end of that week, I had like 8 giant paintings that I had made. And I was like, wow, I kind of dig this. My stepson was here in Boston. He's disabled. We were in Oregon, and he had spent summers and holidays with us, but he went to a boarding school at Mass Hospital School. He was 18, he was graduating from high school, 19. And he wanted to live on his own, but he needed family around a little bit to help him do that. Since his dad was moving, we moved here, so he could still be in Massachusetts. Well, we had no money, we had no jobs, but we were moving here anyways. We were driving around looking for a place to live, and we were like, well, we can't afford Boston, and we couldn't afford the Cape. We drove out there because I'd been to Provincetown once. I didn't even know what city this was. We picked it from the freeway. And I looked at the map and I was like, oh, Providence, all right. And we got off the freeway and we got a newspaper. I graduated with a degree in metals and drawing and design, and there were all these jewelry jobs then. And I was like, well, maybe I could get a job being a buffer, an epoxier, or something in the jewelry trade. So, and my girlfriend was, she had been a kind of adjunct teacher at Providence College. And so we saw there were like a bunch of colleges here, and we thought, well, so we just got off Gano and turned right and ended up in Wicked in Wayland Square and got like a little studio apartment. And that's how we got here. Now I've been here longest I've ever lived anywhere. We've been here 18 years. When we moved here, I got a job at Trinity just by accident because they needed a welder and I knew how to weld. And I worked there pretty much on and off for 10 years. That started me doing set design, and then I did more and more and began to work for, you know, in the local branch off theaters and stuff like that. And after I left Trinity, I had a scene shop for, I don't know, 5-6 years. And so I had this kind of whole theater thing that happened that I wasn't really thinking was going to happen. But from that, I really learned that I liked that collaboration part, that I really enjoyed working with like totally talented people. I think it helps me be a better artist and more in tune with what's going on for myself. Maybe I like helping people too. My father was in the military. I grew up in Virginia, Washington, D.C., and then we moved to New Orleans when I was 11. And then he retired when I was 18, and then I went to school in Baton Rouge. And then I went up to Miami of Ohio for my last 2 years. And then University of Akron, Oregon College of Arts and Crafts. I got my welding degree at Portland Community College. I like to teach. I had wonderful teachers. I cannot say the greatest art teachers in the universe. I've taught for 6 years, so I teach a class, just one class a term at School 1, which is like the art kind of an art high school. Sometimes I teach at the Steel Yard. I taught there for 6 years, welding 3D or sheet metal or some kind of thing like that. And I have a fabrication shop, so that's how I make most of my money. I'm not a sculptor. I don't make my own things out of steel. So I do a lot. I mean, I have a lot of energy. I don't like to sit. I don't like to sit around. I like to work. I don't like to separate the work part from the art part. For me, there's like some meshing of it. It's like all big lump. I don't mind taking orders. I don't mind being bossed. I kind of like that in a certain way, to a certain extent. And I kind of like just going in and like making a bus stop for Ripta out of steel. And it's somebody else's design, but I'm fabricating it and making it. And it's still creative, but it's not mine. And then I can go paint. I force myself to chill, so that things can happen. And now as I've gotten older, I see that that's, I kind of build that in so that I have time to let things settle. And my painting does that. I tend to work really hard for like 2 years, and you come out with an entire body of work, and then you take a break for a year. And you do your other work, and other things inform you, and then I'm just coming out of that now. I think I'm ready to start another body of work. I try not to think about things too much, because I tend to ignore my process, but I try to just do. Usually I just start with one thing that I want to paint and kind of use that as a warm-up. Like I have one image or a couple images that I want to paint, and I just start. And I see things, and I want to try and get them down. I'm not attracted to the idea of like, oh, I want to make a painting about this. I never paint that way. I'm always like, oh, there's this image in my head, and I want to put the image down. There was something about the physicalness of it that I really liked, and I just fell in love with the paint. Even now, it's all about the paint for me. As a painter, I can distort, and I can make color that isn't what I saw, and I can take a head and do something to it, and kind of try and see that little bit of whatever I'm seeing that's the humanness. And I think paintings can make people feel differently. Mostly I try to just be really grateful for stuff. I mean, really, to me the definition of creativity is like to be able to wake up every day and be actively interested in your life and take part in your life and be really want to make things. How lucky am I to be a person who gets to make things? That I can spend my life being a creative person? I mean, that's one reason I like being a painter. I can paint till I'm 100. I'll never figure it out. I can just do this for the rest of my life. I will always have something to do for the rest of my life. It's like great, right? Right?